Mount Fuji rises 3,776 meters into the sky, a cone of snow and silence, the most painted mountain on Earth. The West sees a postcard. But for more than 1,000 years, this was forbidden ground, a sacred peak that no woman was permitted to touch. This is its story. It was still dark when she bound her chest, shaved back her bangs, and pulled a coarse man's robe over her shoulders. The year was 1832, and the lamp threw her shadow long across the wall of the mountain hut. Her hands did not shake, but they were careful. If the guides at the gate discovered she was a woman, she faced exile from her province, and the shame would follow her family for the rest of their lives. Ahead of her, somewhere above the clouds, rose the one mountain in all of Japan that her sex was forbidden to climb. Not discouraged. Not difficult. Forbidden by sacred law, for as long as anyone could remember. So why would a young woman, with everything to lose, risk her name and her freedom to stand on a peak that was never meant for her feet? To understand her, you first have to understand the mountain. Because Mount Fuji was never simply a mountain. For the people who lived in its enormous shadow, it was something far older, and far more dangerous, than a beautiful view. The West first met Fuji through paper. The artist Hokusai drew a single great wave curling its claws over the mountain's distant cone, and that print sailed across the ocean to Europe. There it lit a fire in painters like Van Gogh and Monet, who had never seen anything so bold, so flat, so strange. To Paris, Fuji became a shape, elegant and blue and eternal, a postcard from a country they would never visit. But the Japanese who woke each morning to its silhouette did not see a shape. They saw a god, watching them back. The mountain was the home of Konohana Sokuyahime, whose name means the princess who makes the trees bloom. She was the goddess of cherry blossoms and of volcanic fire, of the things that are most beautiful precisely because they do not last. At the foot of the mountain stood the Senjen Shrine, first raised in the year 806 to calm the volcano's temper after it erupted. There, before they dared to climb, pilgrims rinsed their hands in cold spring water and bowed their heads, asking the goddess for permission to set foot on her slopes. By the time of the Edo period, a movement called Fujikyo had swept across the whole country. Hundreds of thousands of ordinary believers saved their coins for years to make the climb just once in their lives. They dressed in white like the dead preparing to be reborn, rang small bells, and chanted as they rose, station by station, up through the clouds. To climb Fuji was not exercise, and it was not tourism. It was a death and a rebirth, a way to come back down a cleaner soul than you went up. But there was one rule attached to this holiest of climbs, and the rule was absolute. No woman could set foot on the mountain. The ban had a name. It was called Nyanin Kinsei, the rule of no women. Its first root reached down into an old Buddhist fear, the belief that a woman's body, because of menstruation and childbirth, carried an impurity that would defile sacred ground and offend the gods who lived there. But there was a second reason, and it was far stranger than the first. The people said the goddess of Fuji was jealous. Konohana Sokuyahime, they whispered, would not tolerate another woman on her mountain. Let one dare to climb, and the princess would fly into a rage and tear the mountain open with fire. And here is the cruelty buried inside that belief. The goddess they feared, the one they used to keep every woman off the mountain, had herself once been a woman accused and doubted by a man. In the old story, when she told her husband Nenegi that she carried his child after a single night together, he accused her of lying, of hiding another god's son. Enraged at the insult, she stepped into a windowless hut, set it ablaze with her own hand, and gave birth inside the roaring flames, declaring that no fire could harm a child who was truly his. She walked through fire to prove her own honor against a man's suspicion. And yet, for 1,000 years afterward, it was her name that men used to keep every other woman off the mountain she ruled. The doubted became the gatekeeper. There was an even older story about why this goddess was bound so tightly to things that fade. When the god Nenegi came down to earth, her father offered him both of his daughters at once, the Blossom Princess and her elder sister, Iwanagahime, the Princess of Rock. Ninigi took one look and sent the plain rock sister back, keeping only the beautiful one. Her father wept at the insult, because the rock sister carried the gift of long life, and the blossom sister carried only beauty. And so, the story says, human lives became short and lovely and brief, like cherry petals, instead of long and unbreakable, like stone. The goddess of Fuji was, from the very beginning, the goddess of how beautiful things must end. For the women who ached to climb anyway, the country built a strange and quiet consolation. In towns and crowded cities across Japan, believers hauled black volcanic rock from Fuji itself and piled it into miniature mountains called Fujizuka, small mounds only a few meters high. Each little hill had its own winding path and tiny shrines marking the stations of the rail ascent. A woman could circle the mound, breathe hard, and be told she had completed the pilgrimage. It was a mountain she was allowed to climb, built so carefully that she would never need to climb the one that actually mattered. Which brings us back to the climber waiting in the dark. Her name was Takayama Tatsu. She was 24 years old, and she was a devoted follower of Fuji-ko, a woman who had given her whole faith to a mountain that did not want her feet anywhere near it. In the autumn of 1832, she decided that her faith was enough, and that the rule was not. She did not attempt it alone. 5 men agreed to go with her, 3 fellow disciples, a porter to carry their loads, and an old priest named Sanshi, 68 years old, who knew every turn of the trail by heart and chose to lead her up the Yoshida route. She had cut her hair and wrapped herself in that wide-shouldered robe, and now she walked into the long line of pilgrims in the blue dark before sunrise, the hour when faces are hard to read and tired guides do not look too closely. She kept her head low. She let the men do the talking. Station by station, she climbed past the very markers where women were supposed to turn back. The air thinned until each breath felt borrowed. The loose black cinder slid and bit under her straw sandals, and she kept her eyes on the ground, counting under her breath. One more marker. Then one more. Below her, the world shrank into a soft sea of cloud. And then, above the clouds, on ground no woman was permitted to touch, her sandal found the final ridge. Takayama Tatsu stood at the rim of the crater. The wind pulled at the borrowed robe she had hidden inside for 3 days, and she looked down at a country that had told her, her whole life, that this earth was not for her. She did not shout. She did not weep. She only breathed, and let herself stand there. Then she turned and went quietly back down. The mountain did not erupt. The jealous goddess, it turned out, did not mind. 40 years later, in 1872, the new Meiji government swept the old prohibition away with a single decree, and women were finally allowed to climb in the open, in their own clothes, under their own names. But Takayama Tatsu had already stood up there 4 decades early. And then history did what it so often does to the women who go first. It quietly forgot her. Her impossible climb survived in only one place, a single hand-painted scroll, handed down through the years and very nearly lost, rediscovered by chance long after her name had faded entirely from the country's memory. A whole life of courage, hanging by one thread of old paper. Today, hundreds of thousands of people climb Mount Fuji every summer, men and women together, side by side, waiting for the sunrise on the rim of a volcano that was once forbidden to half of them. Almost none of them know that a young woman in a borrowed robe quietly got there first. That is the strange thing about the mountains we are told we can never climb. The rule always feels eternal while it stands. Sacred, ancient, written by the gods, beyond all question. Until one person, alone in the dark, decides that it was only ever a rule. And then simply climbs. So if you had lived in her time, would you have risked exile and shame to stand where you were forbidden to stand, or would you have circled the little hill and told yourself it was enough? Tell me in the comments. Tales of Old Japan publishes a new story every Sunday, Wednesday, and Saturday. If this one stayed with you, subscribe and read more at the Japan Dispatch, the newsletter that keeps these old stories alive. The link is waiting in the description.